Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Mainstream Dissident. My name is Adam, and I'll be your host. This episode is being recorded on May 15th, 2026. And guys, remember, if you like what you hear today, go ahead and click that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. And I'd like to give you a friendly reminder that I'm live streaming every Monday and Wednesday starting at 4:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can find me on Rumble and on 88 Streams. I have with me today a fellow pro-white advocate, Eric Orwoll, known better online as RVOL. He is co-founder of Return to the Land, a private membership association that has faced slander and controversy over the years for its exclusivity. He has a philosophical mind, a yearning for sovereignty, and he is driven to make things happen in real life. Without further ado, Eric, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Yeah, glad to be with you.
Glad to be with you, man. Thank you for coming on. For the audience who's interested in supporting your work, where are the best places to support you, find you?
Well, X is my biggest platform currently. That's at Arvol underscore. You can find me on YouTube by searching Arvol or at Eric Orwell. YouTube is more philosophical content. I make videos on anthropology as well, and like some out there stuff, Atlantis, and that sort of thing. No one ever asks about Atlantis, though. It's sad. It's always RTTL and hey, what about these legal issues? It's like, man. But yeah, so those are the big two. Returntotheland.org is Return to the Land's website. You can find information about us there. We have a Substack with some very informative articles, mostly written by our secretary, Peter Siri, who is also like the mastermind behind our whole legal framework. And it's been super invaluable. Definitely the whole thing wouldn't have come together without him. Uh, you can also find the donation links if you want to help out. We are facing ongoing investigations and one lawsuit. So we're constantly paying lawyers to make sure that we can defend our right to peacefully associate in white intentional communities. And no one else is really out there fighting that battle. So if you want to keep your rights, once in a while, there have to be actual cases that come before a court and favorable decisions have to be made. If people back off, and they always say like, why didn't you try to hide what you're doing? Why not play it low key and then eventually come out? Well, you're not going to grow nearly as fast that way. It's also cowardly to hide. And then we want to set that positive cultural precedent and embolden other white people to do this. So if you do want to donate, you can find that at returntotheland.org/donate. There is the legal fund, the most important by far. And then we also have like a donation drive for our community center here. We're always trying to improve the infrastructure, make it look nicer. And a lot of progress is always being made day to day. So if you do sign up, you're always welcome to come down, pay us a visit, maybe volunteer a bit. And we attract a lot of very interesting people from all over the country, all over the world, really. A guy came by not too long ago backpacking through America from Germany. Um, there's usually at least a couple people on any given week stopping by. So it's been a real ride, very exciting, adding a lot to, I think, all of our lives who are involved with it. So if you want to support us, yeah, returntotheland.org/donate.
Perfect, perfect. And guys, all of those links will be down in the description. You guys have a very professional site. I have been on it frequently since we agreed to sit down here. Now, for anyone who is living under a rock out there, Eric, and doesn't know what Return to the Land is or what a private membership association is, can you give the audience a high-level overview of your organization or your association and what
Sure.
is a private membership association?
Yeah, so private membership associations or PMAs are a category of private club. They're very, very broad. Like the Boy Scouts was initially organized as a PMA. You can have PMAs in conjunction with other forms of organization. For example, will very likely incorporate a 501(c)(8) fraternal benefit society structure, but we won't cease to be a private association. That's just like the broadest umbrella category for private clubs in this country. And there are specific exceptions made for private clubs because they're in the private domain, in things like the Fair Housing Act, Civil Rights Act, employment laws, even. There are things that private clubs can do that the general public domain civil discourse and commerce can't do. For example, like some people will form a PMA in order to collectively own shares in dairy cows. And then because they're the owners collectively of the cows and it's within a private club, they can distribute the milk from their cow that they own and kind of get around USDA regulations and keep costs lower. So farm co-ops and organizations like that often use PMAs, but it's really kind of fundamental to American jurisprudence that we do have this private domain where we're very much free. We have freedom of association, freedom of speech, and then things like the Civil Rights Act, Fair Housing Act, the arguments for why the government had to step in and prevent discrimination in certain domains was that, people were being deprived of opportunities for either housing or employment or this or that. And the rationale was the government has some responsibility to ensure that citizens in general have access to all these various public goods and services. But the private domain is a different story, and people aren't really keen enough on this distinction. We can't, and many people do, we can't conflate what is allowed in the public domain with what's allowed in the private domain. So part of our mission is really to clarify the rights that we do still have. It's like people practically think that it's illegal to like be racist or to prefer to be around white people, but it's obviously not illegal on that level. The government can't currently tell you you must have a black friend. So, but these
Not
things
yet.
creep. Not yet. These things do creep over time, and the more we sit back and just accept this like erosion of our own personal rights, civil rights, in the private domain, the more that domain is going to shrink and shrink and shrink until you're boxed in, and whatever the government says, like that's just how your life is. So that's a private association. Return to the Land, we're a European Heritage Association. We're interested in facilitating the creation of intentional community, but that's not the only reason we exist. We also exist to foster other sorts of communal activities, both online and in person. We organize meetups, we organize events, we host speakers, and we have games and stuff. So there aren't that many private clubs that are family oriented that are pro white. If you're Asatru, for example, you have some place to go, you have events to attend, you can go to Hoff and worship, right? And that's a very strong sense of community. But for Christians, there's really no comparable alternative unless you're Christian identity. And then those churches are very, very small in number. So there's the Church of Israel in Western Missouri, for example, where you can go and they're celebrating white identity, celebrating their Christian identity, obviously. But personally, I don't subscribe to that. I don't subscribe to Asatru per se. So there aren't good options for effectively social clubs for our people. It used to be very common. You would have like Norwegian heritage associations or Italian heritage associations, and people would have clubhouses effectively. Like there'd be a Polish club and then a clubhouse in town where people would actually meet up and have events and have a sense of community. Over the 20th century, community life and public life has greatly diminished, and people are less involved in volunteering, joining voluntary associations of any kind. And we think that's a big contributing factor to the decline in our mental health. More people are on meds today. More people kill themselves today. More people are on drugs today because we're not part of tribes that we've always had for literally millions of years. Primates organize socially, and we need that. If we don't have our tribe, and we only see a handful of people at work, and we don't have those intimate connections, like our body, our mind tells us that we're not safe, because in the natural condition, you'd be picked off by predators if you were by yourself. You needed to be with the herd, with the tribe to survive. So it's not an optional thing. It's not some auxiliary thing on the side of, well, when I get done with the workday, when I get done taking care of my kids, when I get done with everything else and going on X and posting and like liking everything that I need to like and watching my streams, like you can't just shoehorn in a little bit of community time at church on Sunday, which is for many people, that's their community outside of um, work and home. But so we're missing a whole aspect of civic life that used to be so common. The only way I think to do that now is to do it in a more formal way and in a way where we can muster resources collectively to ensure our continuing right to peacefully organize. People are most interested in our kind of flagship intentional community in Arkansas, but RTTL is much, much broader than that. It's not just 40 or so people in the Ozarks. It's more than 1,000 people in Europe, Canada, the US. We have Australian members now, and actually there's a
Oh,
lot
okay.
of progress. There's a lot of progress on those other fronts. So people are right now looking at land in Central Europe in the association, and we're not the only community anymore. There's another community in the US currently established, already being built. There are other communities that are being started in the near future. People are organizing them. So there's a lot going on in Return to the Land. It is kind of the most the largest and best organized social club for people of European heritage who want to celebrate and preserve that heritage. Uh, so, so yeah, that's Return to the Land.
Nice, man. Nice. Yeah. And I was actually gonna ask you behind the scenes, but I figured why not just do it on our interview here. So if I heard you correctly, people who are interested in applying, they can go to returntotheland.org, but they don't have to commit to living in your flagship community in the Ozarks to
Right.
do so. They can just join up and then you guys then have different regions in the United States to where, hey, you're part of this region. Okay, that's really cool.
Exactly. Yeah. A common misconception. But we have a lot of meetups happening on a regular basis now. Like our Southwest chapter has met up, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. Um, Idaho is very active. There's not currently a full fledged intentional community on the ground, but they do have infrastructure. They have a community center of sorts already working for them. And there's just a lot more going on than people understand. Now, you can't know all the details if you're not in the association because it's supposed to be the private domain. That's the whole point of it. That's why we have the right to effectively discriminate and choose who we want to associate with because it's our private lives, it's a private club, it's not for the general public, but we're also not barred from discussing it publicly. We don't have to make it a secret society to have a private association. So, but we do have to be careful about striking that balance, and we can't constantly be sharing everything that we're doing, but it is quite a lot now.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree with that sentiment because, like you alluded to earlier in the opening here, without being able to discuss these things in a public setting, that continues that taboo nature of things. And if you're anything like me, which I do believe you are, we want to normalize these conversations. It's okay for whites to be like every other race and prefer our company over the company of others. So yeah, I think you guys are doing a good job balancing that because privacy, it is important. Hence, private membership association. But yeah, dude, let's switch gears here for a second. So I noticed that you're live streaming on Rumble as well and you've had a recent episodes. I think I just watched one yesterday here, but I noticed on your YouTube channel you have videos spanning back anywhere from like 10 to 13 years ago. What got you interested in content creation first off?
Well, I just liked YouTube. I was a big fan of getting ideas from like random old men who would walk through the woods and record themselves talking. Because it was just, it was a world of concepts that I did not have access to before. And then like 2008, 2009, YouTube really rolls out and people start using it for vlogging, and it's like highly stigmatized. If you're on YouTube producing vlogs in 2009, you're a weirdo, you know? But I liked it. I watched some of these creators who they probably had like 100 subscribers, you know, which nowadays are terrible numbers. But, you know, not that many people were into it. So I would go and look through someone's back catalog and watch like every single video they'd made. I would find someone who I clicked with or that I thought was intelligent and like absorb everything I could of their thought. And I found it to be a lot more efficient than reading long books, because even philosophers, like, they waste a lot of space. They kind of take up too much time waxing on ideas instead of keeping things concise and keeping them fresh. And obviously, dealing with contemporaries where you can engage with them, it's a lot more entertaining. So I was just a fan of the content, and you know, I had my own philosophical ideas that I wanted to share. There weren't a ton of outlets where I was living. Like, I think I was living technically in Madison, Wisconsin when I first started creating videos. But then I was in like Rochester, New York, Southern California, like larger, more intellectually inclined spaces, even. And there wouldn't be a philosophy club to attend. Like in all of Southern California, you couldn't find a single philosophy get together where people would come together, or at least you couldn't find it on Craigslist. So I was kind of starved of an outlet for that, and I started making videos to talk about principally like my metaphysical ideas. I was very into physics, and my approach to philosophy and ancient philosophy, which I'm now very into, was through physics bridging into metaphysics. Like, what are the foundations of physics? Not just how does matter behave, but what really is matter? What's the scope of the universe? And not just what we can, in principle, observe, but what's like it founded on? What's the substrate of the universe? What's the nature of physical reality? And questions like that. And I was into the popular physics authors, into the multiverse hypothesis and simulation theory and stuff like that. So I spun off my own arguments and then started talking about those ideas. Um, there was a pretty active vlogging community that I kind of integrated into, and that overlapped with what was really the nascent alt right. So I already had some racial disposition. I remember like in middle school learning about World War II and like seeing the idea that the the Nazis were going for, and just thinking like, man, if they'd only like kept their cool and not invaded Czechoslovakia, what could have happened? And like, you know, I felt like with the Civil War propaganda, with the Holocaust propaganda, it's like my people are sort of being made to be the villains, and I know that's not the whole story. I know there's more to this, and it felt like a conspiracy, basically, growing up in Southern California to replace the previous dominant demographic, white Americans, with all these other people. And that was literally happening like in my neighborhood, in my town, as I grew up. So I saw it firsthand. But being raised in Southern California, I had all these liberal priors. My parents like voted Democrat and stuff. So I, when I went to college, I had a good friend who was very into the Western philosophical tradition. I was more into science and physics and my own arguments. You know, I didn't really dive into the Western canon like my friend had. And so I kind of indirectly got exposed to all these thinkers like Kant and Heidegger and Plato and Aristotle and Julius Evola and stuff like that through him. And that kind of sowed a bunch of seeds. I digested those thoughts, and then when I got on YouTube shortly after I graduated college, very quickly I kind of got in circles with people like Sean Last. If those He's still out there. I don't know if he makes videos anymore, but Sean Last, Fringe Elements at the time, Ryan Falk, known as the alternative hypothesis today. So some of these characters that I I found them talking about race realism. Like they're still out there, but a lot of them have fallen off. And that also was like a world of ideas that you just couldn't find an outlet for it. Um, Being interested in science, I was very positive about the ideas around evolution. And then, uh, like social Darwinism was so discouraged and stigmatized in school. And that also seemed like, even in school, like, why would this be stigmatized? If evolution's true and we're animals, why wouldn't evolutionary principles apply to human beings? But they just would not apply it at all to speculate about group differences, about evolutionary psychology, which was another area of interest. And so, like, yeah, in these dark corners of the internet, I found people willing to actually dive deep on ideas and debate ideas and discuss ideas. So I've loved it. I mean, it's been a big part of my life. I didn't do it professionally until very recently, and I don't know if I am really cut out to be a content creator per se full time. Uh, but it is definitely a passion and a significant recreational activity for me, discussing philosophy, uh, race realism. Still, I think not enough people are informed about all the facts. However, this stuff is now leaking into the mainstream. But yeah, that's kind of what drew me into it. And then I've gotten in different kind of niche interest topics through YouTube, through the internet. A lot of people make anthropology videos now. There's so much content on like Neanderthals and Denisovans and uh, stuff like that. And I read all the papers as well. So just an enthusiast. We're living in a very interesting age, right? Where we have
Yes.
archaeogenetic data for the first time. We have all sorts of studies and meta analyses on racial differences. We have a serious worldview that just hasn't been fully crystallized and kind of sold as a package. Like, here's this worldview, like communism. It has all these theoretical priors, but it's packaged and like people are indoctrinated into it. We're still kind of messy. And I feel like one of the things we have to do is more neatly organize the Western canon side of like what we're standing for, our tradition, also modern scientific information, and then kind of going beyond that. Like that's why I'm into the Atlantis stuff and ancient history, and that's why the Nazis were into it, right? They had the Annanerba division for like researching esoterica. Is we need a spirit that draws us beyond just the kind of mundane field. We have to be thinking beyond that and think of our identity as playing a role in some kind of broader struggle or something larger than ourselves. I don't think necessarily like esoteric Hitlerism edits and Atlantis hypotheses are going to cut it, but I do think that side of things is very important as well. Return to the Land is not into all that itself; it's neutral for religion, spirituality, and so forth. But I do feel that's another like what I care about in discussion online. I feel like there is a spiritual question or opening or an unresolved tension that's there on the right wing, and you see it manifested in the pagan Christian divide, and then like schisms between all the different factions. And really, it goes down to like who is Western man and what has happened to us, and where do we find that deepest sense of identity and what really matters to us. Well, we've kind of uh, fragmented over the last couple millennia, and to really heal that and to move forward, we're going to need to think seriously about those things. And my approach is discussion is how that actually happens. You don't have to come out with all of the cult doctrines and get everyone to buy in. Instead, we can talk honestly, openly about what really matters to us. What is the nature of identity? How does that relate to things like God and the meaning of life and questions like that? And I'm hoping as more organizations come together and more serious actors enter the field, and it's less about just constantly watching live streams and worrying about view counts, that hopefully more like earnest dialogue will open back up. It moves in waves. Like there are times when things are very heady and intellectual and interesting, and then times where it's very kind of populist and I think we're on the ascent. I think we're going to go back to some interesting intellectual content soon.
Yeah, I actually, to your last point, I agree wholeheartedly. Like, um, some of my friends behind the scenes, we will talk about reviving a white European Renaissance. Like it is happening in real time, and I don't know if that's because the imminent disaster that we may or may not be facing upcoming. Things are getting bad out there and more people are realizing it. But during your explanation there, I thought back to when you were talking about high school and that you were not the first individual that I've spoken to that has said they remember history class in high school or middle school and just thinking to themselves, "Okay, wait a minute, something doesn't add up, something doesn't jive," or thinking about the possibilities. I see that, like, as a recurring theme. One of the things I've been trying to kind of focus on is how can we replicate this mindset? How can we get white people to start caring about our self-interest? How can we get them out of this approved narrative frame of reference and onto something greater? And I kind of what that'll segue me into this question for you. Do you think that exposure to historical philosophical content or writings is directly correlated with the dissident thinking, the alt-right way of thinking, if you will? Or do you think that it's something else that attracts people to ethnocentrism? Do you think they're correlated at all, or what do you think?
For a certain class of person, they're certainly correlated. I think there's some kind of prior dispositional thing. I think a lot of it's hormonal. If you are
Okay.
higher testosterone and you're more prone to challenge prevailing narratives and authority structures, you're just by nature a dissident, then you'll be very likely to question all of the dogmas and sacred cows that you grew up with. I think the majority of the people who are really pushing things in our direction, they're kind of just born that way. However, the philosophical history, intellectual history, and like knowledge about human biodiversity and following all the studies, like they're also very correlated. Where like we have a lot of people who have read a certain set of authors, especially political philosophers, and then a lot of people who are familiar with like the work of Charles Murray and you know the long list of sociologists and anthropologists who really make the case for our worldview at a contemporary scientific level. So I think it's a rare person who like begins studying Western philosophy and then gets red pilled through that. I think it's more that they are dispositionally inclined to question these dogmas. They start looking for alternatives, and obviously they look to the past because that's when everyone shared these ideas that they now hold. And it's certainly something that emboldens them because if you're on your own in your dissident thinking, and no one in your everyday life shares your views and you don't have that like deep intellectual foundation or scientific foundation legitimating your views, you're probably not going to keep it up. So it's like it's an indispensable aspect of our culture that we've developed. Is it as simple as you can simply teach people enough Hegel and they'll become based? Probably, probably not. Some of the race and IQ stuff and the sociological impact of racial diversity, that stuff is more compelling and I think can eventually shift people's minds, but only very slowly. Like Murray, for example, despite being the guy who published the bell curve and being famous for it for decades, has only recently fully accepted, okay, what are the implications of this for how we ought to organize and how we can avoid social problems and disharmony in our culture. And again, he's old already. He's been out there for decades, and he was still inclined to go for the, well, we should be race blind liberals about this. And if these facts are true, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a naturalistic fallacy that we have to organize according to them. We can instead organize our whole society around the premise that we're going to constantly try to overcome our nature rather than building systems to fit our nature like we would do with any other animal. It's like in a zoo, you give the animal the habitat that fits its nature. You don't like try to get the wolf to overcome its violent dispositions and become vegetarian. Like total loons would do that, and total loons do it with humans as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think we can't get rid of those aspects of our culture and succeed. I don't know that you can lead with them. Something else really has to be the first step to lead people in our direction. And I think we do have to accept that a certain amount of it is just biological, hormonal. There are dispositional leftists and dispositional right-wing people, cognitively feminine folks and cognitively masculine folks, and that doesn't totally correlate with gender, but it largely does, which explains voting disparities and things like that. So, um, so essentially, yeah, like the red pilling the masses thing, I think has limited growth potential
Yes.
because only like 30% of the population is physically mentally predisposed to be able to think our way, and then of those people, like most of them will simply have to be told what to do. They're not going to spontaneously create any change. And so by far the more useful thing to do for people who already have come to our way of thinking is organize those who have come to this camp. Like we have thousands of people, all sorts of resources at our disposal, but we're all kind of isolated and atomized still. So things like Return to the Land and similar organizations are really kind of late in coming to the fore and setting the direction. Not that no one's tried it at all in the past, but the attempts have been too few, and then most of the leaders organizing these attempts were too like, kind of blockheaded. No offense to people like William Luther Pierce, for example, who like, okay, he was a trailblazer, he did a lot,
Yes.
but he also created a whole religion that, okay, now people have to subscribe to this whole religion to join the organization effectively. That's going to severely limit the people that he can work with. And hey, the guy was a genius, clearly, but it's not something that's replicable because when you have that level of personality who keeps it going through who he is and how smart he is, what happens when that guy is out of the picture? Will it be sustainable? Organizations like the Boy Scouts still exist. They're still major organizations because it wasn't based on some leader who had his ideas. And too many right wing factions are simply some content creator's fan base. And that's not a sustainable way to build organizations. So that's why RTTL is trying to do it differently.
No, that's a solid point, and I can't believe that I haven't even, considered the because I subscribe to biological predeterminism as well, and, I can't believe that I didn't necessarily associate political inclinations with that, either,
Oh, yeah.
that's that helped me out, so I do
There are whole
appreciate that.
studies. Yeah, there's a lot of information when you start looking into it.
Right on, dude, right on. Um, so you mentioned RTTL again, and that's why we're here to promote Return to the Land and all that good stuff. So did you go out on your own and you just said, "You know what? I'm gonna start this organization. I'm going to, build this out in the Ozarks where I'm going to do this on my own?" Or did this happen whenever a group of like-minded individuals with a similar vision got together?
The latter by far. Yeah, I mean, I had my own ideas in mind. I was advocating for intentional communities for our people back in like 2013. Um, I thought it would be more productive for it to be academically inclined. I've always been very big on minoritarian rather than majoritarian strategies, in line with elite theory. But for me, like I see the impact that organizations like the Pythagoreans had, where this isn't classical elite theory. You take a certain like income bracket and captains of industry and so forth, and then balance their their interests with what's politically achievable and if there's room for a power vacuum or a power swap between classes. Like that's all interesting, and I think that study matters, and people should read. You know,
In general.
people. Yeah, yeah, people should read like Pareto and the other elite theorists and stuff like that. It is useful, but it's also kind of outdated, and it's not for an information warfare environment and fifth generational warfare. It's sort of industrial society and how class structure enables or doesn't enable political revolution there. And the new elite theory of today, like people like Peter Turkin, I guess, are kind of working on it. And there are intimations of that kind of science, but the dynamics are going to be very different. But me, I'm more like atavistic in my approach, where the Christians didn't have a lot of wealth to promote their movement. Instead, they organized in a novel way. They organized new types of communities and created a new value system. And then that scaled. And I look at, anthropologically, what happens when a new horizon takes off? Well, it's localized somewhere in like some particular town. They create an innovative social dynamic, it works, and then boom, like you have the Yamnaya horizon or the corded ware horizon, and the demographics of whole continents are shifted, and not gradually by all of the people in Europe like voting to become Indo-European speakers. A different kind of processes at work. Or like the Pythagoreans, like I said, not having a huge amount of resources, but organizing differently, focusing on mathematical study. And then they set the groundwork for Greek science and math that led to all of the accomplishments of the ancient world. Rome, the engineering accomplishments wouldn't have been possible without the mathematical work of the Pythagoreans. But they were a small set of communities in Italy, right? And people underestimate that potential. If we could organize modern day Pythagoreans and get into scientific research and stuff like that, well, it's no there's no way to predict what outsized social impact that could potentially have, especially since we're living in an age where new technologies are creating all sorts of new business models that aren't fully off the ground yet. So for entrepreneurs, this is a golden age. For like wages, it's not a golden age. It's a very bad time to be dependent on employment. But for people wanting to explore new models and experiment with new models and new technologies, well, it's a very fertile age. And so that's where my mind was that, okay, in light of the demographic situation and the way things are headed, the best we can do is have a network of academically inclined intentional communities, a large like school confederacy, basically. And I outlined how that might work. And that was my big idea. And I put that out there. I said how important it is to start organizing and also doing other related activities like a media hub, and how can we rethink how we're going about content creation. uh, Not all of that has come to fruition or even turned out to be that realistic in actual practice, but I did put those ideas out there, and that attracted the group of people that came down to Missouri, where I had some land at the time, to help me build infrastructure for that first camp to kind of start the school model. And then over the course of a week, them volunteering on my land, we did an aircrete demo too. I think that was an important factor here, where they came down partly to learn this like new building technology. It's not new; it's from like the 50s or 60s, but relatively novel. Aircrete is aerosolized concrete. You take
Okay.
Portland cement and you inject this foam agent into it with a pump of some kind, and that
Mhm.
creates this puffed up concrete that'll harden and has really good insulative properties. Turns out not so useful. It's like very time consuming and labor intensive. But anyway, they got like interesting information out of the seminar effectively, and it just like the vibe was very good when you get men together working and not just showing up to have a party, which too many right wing organizations, that's what it was. If you had like a TRS meetup, you would go bowling. You would go maybe on a hike if you were being productive, relatively speaking. But you would get together and drink. You would get together and basically do nothing with the potential that they actually had. Whereas when you get together and you work together, well, that natural, again, hormones, like when you're working with your guys, you start to form bonds very naturally. If you're working in a construction crew, like part of the way or part of the reason they get borderline homoerotic sometimes or in the military is that there are literally hormones, and somebody, watching this, I'm sure knows the specific hormone responsible for this, but that are released that create a sense of, a bond with the people that you're working with, especially among men. So that's the model, and we've kind of extrapolated from that and taken lessons from that. And we highly recommend anyone who wants to see something happen, get together and do work parties, because then you'll see who actually is willing to put in the effort. You're testing the people's quality, and also it's a proven way to actually build bonds. Way better than merely socializing, merely showing up to talk about taboo topics. So yeah, we hung out for a week basically, and some people involved had more resources and wanted to see something happen on a larger scale. Peter Siri had his legal framework he had already done the research on. That's like the real foundation of RTTL. I was just the guy that put out the video talking about, hey, we need a network, we need communities. And that general idea attracted enough people with enough resources and better ideas, really, than I had at the time, where we were able to piece something together that was larger than the sum of its parts. Um, and I was absolutely not like the mastermind behind it. I had a phone call with my brother shortly after this like took off and RTTL was formed. We bought the land, and I was like, man, I'm really afraid I got sucked into a honeypot. I don't really know these people, like, but now I know them. I trust them, obviously. But at the time, it was like, it is a leap. It's a different dynamic when it goes from I'm watching live streams, I'm hanging out on social media, to we are actually investing our resources and building something for our community that is larger than ourselves. And we make sacrifices and donate to the cause ourselves, and donate our time, energy. Um, and it's certainly been worth the trade off. I think the freedom that you have being like a free agent or a lone wolf is absolutely not worth it. In general, like trying to keep your options open and remain free is a bad move in terms of life satisfaction. And there are studies on that. Like the more options people have, actually, the more miserable they end up being, because they're never really sure if they picked the right option. Like this is an argument for arranged marriage. If you just like marry who your parents told you to marry when you're 18 and started a family and don't think about what else was possible, well then like everyone has good qualities. You'll find some reason to like the person. And the same kind of with the movement. Like if you just commit to something and like, okay, I'm not sure about Patriot Front, but I'm going to give it a shot, join and actually go all in and fully participate and get to know the people, well, it's going to be life changing. And it will be more rewarding than constantly being tepid and like, should I put my foot in? Should I, remain aloof? So yeah, definitely the latter of your two options. It kind of came together spontaneously, and then his ballooned way beyond anything we thought it would be relatively quickly. I think it was the right time for it to happen,
Yes.
and there was a desire for it.
Yes, man. Yeah, I agree. Time and a lot of these just so happen to come to fruition. It's all about timing, whether it's intentional or not. It just sometimes works out that way. And that's also something else that I do advocate for myself. On some of my recent live streams, I've boosted Return to the Land because I do like what you guys are doing, that community building aspect. Just to kind of pair it off of what you said, that is so powerful. And for a good six, so I almost did the meme. For a good 6 or 7 months, um, I was in that same boat. I was like, well, I don't know if I really want to get involved with any group. I don't know if I do. I really want to advocate for my people. I really want to make something happen tangible. I don't want to be stuck in my online echo chamber anymore. But I don't know well, the SPLC, it's all funded by feds, which is total horse crap anyway. Um, but I made the decision and I've gotten vetted for several different things that I don't need to disclose because again, private. But it is the best decision that I have made. It is a great feeling to be not only just be around like-minded individuals, but to actually make an impact in the real
Mhm.
world. Because I'm not knocking the power of online because online is great. You get the word out there, everything happens, but unless you actualize what you are speaking online, nothing's ever gonna happen.
Yeah, no, totally. I think the biggest value of the online discourse is for the purpose of organizing real life activity. It's like you can't breed the white race into a larger population online. You can't politically organize, strictly speaking, online. You can't build communities. Like none of the things that are really our goal, like more white people existing, us having more political power, none of that takes place on the internet. We can get more eyeballs on our ideas and we can convince people to actually live according to their values and then organize. And if it doesn't funnel into some concrete activity, then truly, what is the point? And I do think there are people who are acting like controlled opposition who just want to keep everything online, discourage organizing. Um, and I think people are kind of becoming wise to that. And they're seeing that, things used to be different. In our circles, you had a small number of organizations that were advocacy groups or activist groups. And they were kind of dangerous to be involved with because, like, every single one wanted to go out and street protest and get themselves potentially legally liable for all sorts of things. But there are more peaceful, like innocuous ways to organize. Return to the land is like kind of an in between ground where we are pushing boundaries and hopefully setting precedent. But also, it's like, I mean, what's the charge going to be ultimately? It's going to be the liabilities limited to a company that's holding land. It's a relatively small subset of members. We're not out there like endangering the peace or anything like that. But then beyond return to like, there are less risky ways that we can proactively be organized, and other communities do this as well. They have lobbying groups, advocacy groups, even if it's just you're signed up to donate 15 bucks a month to some ongoing legal fund where we're going to hire lawyers to do research into human rights applied to white people, or like DEI applied to white people. I love the DEI for white guys account on X.
Yeah.
Excellent excellent optics on that. And we have to apply that thinking across the board. It's like they built all these legal structures off of the Western system, like Western civilization, to serve their own interests. And then simultaneously, we've backed off and we no longer use any of our tools at our disposal to actually benefit ourselves. But they're still there and they're powerful. And we actually have a disproportionate number of lawyers in the movement. We have a lot of lawyers, we have a lot of software engineers, like exactly what you would need to build bold new systems that are capable of a lot. Like those are the people that are actually at our disposal that we can work together and build like employment networks where we have a leg up.
Yes.
Obviously, people complain about Indians nepotistically hiring Indians, and we see it happen all the time. But I'm not saying operate in exactly the same way. We can find ways of doing that legally where we get better opportunities and we open up, like we embolden our entrepreneurs and we become the ones more likely to have those small like flagship private offering companies that one day do balloon up and become much more relevant. Power in the modern day can swing in a decade, where a company like X, or like Elon Musk's net worth for that matter, like 10 years ago was a tiny fraction of what it is today, and he ballooned up and became this way outsized player because he was willing to be innovative. Because, I mean, I don't know exactly all his business practices, how he got his edge, but the advantage that white males have in particular is we have the greatest number of genius personality types. That's not just high IQ. That's also you're willing to piss people off because to be a genius is to break previous paradigms. We are paradigm breakers. We're creative people. We're independent minded. We're very truth oriented and truth seeking. So I would bet on us 10 out of 10 times to be the ones who come up with the new system, the new thing, the new business model. And we can empower people right now. We know we have in our movement an outsized number of this most valuable demographic, high IQ, disagreeable white males. It's like we're swimming in this demographic.
Yeah.
Um, and really we need some kind of balance where there's more like family men and hardworking, like ordinary salt of the earth types. But it is going to flow from the top down. We'll find ways of incorporating more of those folks. And we see it with Return to the Land, where it was a bunch of like high IQ autists who came together and like, hey guys, let's build this website and build this legal framework based on this theory that I read about. And all of the other autists were like, yeah, that sounds great. Let's all do that. But then what it pans out into is now I'm getting Facebook messages from random people in Arkansas who are like, hey, I think what you're doing is great, man. Can I come by and check it out? And I'm like, yeah, you can. And that's the interface. But you have to build it in order for the average person to be able to work within it. And it's not like the high IQ people are the only valuable ones. And like the whole pyramid needs to be celebrated and valued. I think our greatest weakness has been obsession with wealth. We're in this boat because our
Mhm.
wealthy elite betrayed us to get to get money from certain factions out there. Let me not put it in a crass way, but like
Yes,
that's
yes,
what
yes.
happened. They defected. They didn't have loyalty with us. They had loyalty with the people in the elite class, which were disproportionately not us. And so that's what happens. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, dude. Yeah. No, I feel you 100% on all that. That is great. But you've mentioned numerous times return to the land, it's pushing the boundaries, we created this legal framework. Now I'm going to read a little something here. And we briefly talked about it before our sit down, but back on April 28th, House Bill 2103 passed the Pennsylvania House in a 100 to 101 vote,
mhm,
right? At 100, we got to love democracy. But it passed the House in Pennsylvania, and I quote from the news source, that would close a loophole in the state law that let white nationalist groups establish communities under the guise of a private club or member only organization by blocking such groups from restricting membership by race, color, and national origin. This bill was specifically proposed by Rep. Ben Waxman from Philadelphia to oppose organizations such as Return to the Land. Do you guys have this bill on your radar, and do you foresee facing similar abuse of the American legal system in the future
yeah.
to stifle your association?
Of course.
Okay,
So right now, I think it would be dangerous for them to allow our case to make its way up and be heard by the Supreme Court or something like that, because
based.
the wrong from their perspective kind of precedent now would definitely open the door to a lot more of this. So conventionally, what's done if you want to set legal precedent over time and push things in a certain direction is state by state. You sponsor legislation where it's easier to set the precedent in a state. There are more domains where state law can constitutionally apply than federal law as well. Like state laws can go further by their nature than federal laws. And things where you couldn't just pass a federal law to enact it. Well, if you gradually, state by state, pass similar laws and then a Supreme Court case comes up, well, what does the Supreme Court look at? They look at what is normative and what is legal across the country and what's the case law in the lower courts. So this is what they're doing. They're going to try to build up a repertoire of cases at the state level and laws at the state level so that one day when that federal decision, Supreme Court decision is made, uh, the justices, if they follow conventional jurisprudential principles, will be impelled to ban this sort of association, or seriously hamper our movements and activities. It's not the only one. Pennsylvania passed that law. It's not just a bill that was approved. And then
Oh,
Texas also passed a law. They billed that. Pennsylvania is very outright about it, and they named us specifically and said we want to prevent things like RTTL. By the way, the Pennsylvania law was not the best written, and we'll probably still be able to operate in Pennsylvania. So nice try, guys, but like we're always gonna be ahead of you. We have too many high IQ
I
autists.
love that.
Um, but Texas passed a law. It was billed as an anti-Sharia measure addressing the Epic community, or rebranded now as like the Meadow or something like that. But this Islamist settlement where it was
Oh,
kind of
okay.
like an HOA where you had to effectively be part of the mosque community or the religious community in order to not, like, they were finding ways of forcing people to pay the jizya or the non-Muslim tax indirectly through HOA rules and stuff like that. And it was pretty transparent what they were doing. They were trying to institute Sharia law in the U.S. And so that bill in Texas acted as though it was trying to defeat that, because that's what's saleable with the public in Texas, and in most states. And ultimately, they had a religious exemption in that bill, which means they're not affected at all. They're
Okay.
not affected whatsoever. Their bill was written more precisely than the Pennsylvania one, and actually now it would be harder for us to do a community in Texas than in Pennsylvania or probably any other state. Very unfortunate.
Mm,
Because Texas is, I mean, it's a beautiful state. It's a resource-rich state. There are a lot of
yes.
based people. Thomas Rousseau's in Texas. Um, so, so yeah, there's a lot to be said for the state, and it is a shame. But also, we will find ways of operating despite that. And then Arkansas, they didn't pass a bill, but a bill was proposed. It didn't make it out of the initial like council discussion, and probably because it was horribly written, wouldn't have effectively addressed us. Also, would have spilled over and unduly affected hunting clubs and basically any group of people that owns land through a corporation, which is a lot of people. Like if you've ever looked at the plat map for your county, like half of the lots you'll see this LLC or a list of names because it's tenancy in common. Like collective land ownership is super normal, right? And people, like groups like that, have to be able to decide who buys in and who doesn't, because it's a private group. It's not open to the general public. Like not every hunting club is just accessible for anyone who wants to show up. We have the right to free association and private association. So that didn't make it out. They'll probably redraft it and propose it again. And obviously, when they do, we will be there to make a fuss about it, and hopefully we can stop it from happening. I mean, hopefully the Pennsylvania thing is telling, because when they were overt, and whether they try to hide it as anti-Sharia or whatever, we'll make it over. We'll make sure people understand what's actually being proposed in that legislation. But in Pennsylvania, it was 100 to 101. And Pennsylvania
Yeah.
is a lot more purple than Arkansas. So I would hope that Arkansas legislators would understand, like, whether you agree with our particular association's values or not, it is important that we preserve the right of private citizens to freely associate in private clubs, and we don't hamper that and hem that in. Um, I'm optimistic, but they will keep doing it. This is why the legal fund is so important. If people can, like, say you have a disposable $5 a month, if you could do a recurring donation to the RTTL legal fund, then that's money that we can use to eventually get our own laws passed. We can draft legislation and get sponsors and lobby effectively for our cause. We're not a political association, but it is our duty to protect our interests. And right now, we're the best organized to do something like this. There aren't other legal advocacy groups out there, so like they're on this. We've been public more or less for a little over a year. Most people didn't know about us prior to that. We're like 2.5 years old. but like we've been in the spotlight for a year, and already in the course of 1 year, two states have passed laws against us. Arkansas has kind of tried, and they're gonna keep spinning that off. And so we don't have an infinite amount of time. We don't have a lot of time um, in order to move in the opposite direction and very firmly set precedent and laws where we're allowing private associations more autonomy. And I think it can be packaged into a whole political platform. We'll see what happens with Massey. That is a big part of this. Like, is it possible that a more libertarian, genuinely America first branch of the Republican Party could take it back from like the current pro-Israel MAGA base? And I don't know, but if it is possible, I think the new platform could look a lot more like, hey, let's go back to states' rights. Let's cut federal spending. Let's actually allow for, like, say, homeschool parents to be compensated just like public schools are compensated. Let's allow for voucher programs in education to, improve the private school markets. Let's do things that are going to give more freedom and self-rule to more local communities. And I think Americans in general will very warmly receive that message. Left wing types and right wing types, if it's about freedom. You're not going to have the right wing hardliner win and then carry overwhelming supermajority support. First of all, they're probably not going to win. Even if they did, they'd be ruling over a very divided country and getting support behind right wing authoritative policies to like change the demographics or change marital laws, change laws to be more traditionalist. Like, it's just like it doesn't pass the sniff test. It's not actually reasonable. Politics is the art of the possible, not the art of I'm going to fantasize about getting everything I could possibly want and then like wait until that is somehow handed down to me by Hitler 2.0. But that's not what happens, and that's not where we can actually bank our hopes. So yeah, I think a new coalition has to be built, and Massey will be at the center of it if he wins, if he's not unseated. But even if he is unseated, he might run. We might be able to build a new kind of coalition like this with these issues at the center. And if that gains an ascendancy and like the Republican base can be shifted in that direction and also absorb a lot of left wingers who are now against the system for other reasons. Like a lot of left wingers and right wingers are against Israeli influence. Okay, so the Democrat Party is still dominated by people who are never going to betray Israeli influence. The Republican Party is somewhat dominated by the money side of it, but it also demographically incorporates a lot of people who I think could be persuaded, could listen to reason, but only if there's the right social movement. And it's like, that's not on the base, that's on us. The base in these things is the matter, right? That's what's acted upon. They're the patient. We, the propagandists, the people pushing a new political vision, we're the agent here. And so if you want to complain that like the base isn't coming with you, you just haven't done your job yet. And it's up to us to do that job and shift the base in the right direction. But that will only happen through prior organizing of our guys. But yeah, I mean, we'll see. As far as like, will RTTL ultimately be held up as viable? Is this a good model or not? Remains to be seen. Even if we're told no, though, at least we know where the line in the sand is, and now we can restructure and do what is possible. Because I'm all for what is possible to advance the interests of white children and white communities. That's what we have to do. Again, get our minds out of like, this would be great. Wouldn't it be cool if kind of political thinking? Politics is the art of the possible. So being told you can do this, you can't do this by the government and defining those edge cases, that's a very valuable thing, and it will help us direct our efforts in a more realistic direction.
Yes, and I think it's kind of funny that a lot of the guys that aren't willing to kind of step out into the real world and meet with like-minded individuals, they have this conception. I can have my utopia. All I have to do is just sit around and just add water and there it is. It'll materialize. No, Political action is just that it is action. So that is one reason why I respect what you are doing so much, because you are kind of the organization as a whole, but you guys are putting your ass on the line, forging a path for others to follow, legally speaking. So I think that that's great, and I do encourage people again to donate to that legal fund, because you guys are making waves out there, and the decisions made based on your organization will be important for all white people. And to touch on, you mentioned libertarianism, dude. Okay, real quick. So like my buddy, he's an anarcho-capitalist, right? That's like libertarian plus. Um, and he and we have political discussions, political debates. He challenges my worldview. I do the same back to him. And I said, you know what? It in a weird sort of way, his utopian vision would be a way for me to actualize mine, which is a more traditionalist. We'll just say I'm a traditionalist of sorts. Thinking back to the German era, we will enact the Fourth Empire here, ideally, but it's like you said, the art of the possible. Politics is the art of the possible. So, what can we do right now if we wish to see um, our ideal future someday, or at least some semblance of it? But like you said, man, this is about preserving whites, like full stop. So we will your organization will be a key component, I think, in kind of forging that path. um, let me ask you another question here. Let me ask you another question. So it's obvious with this bill and other backlash from other that other organizations have faced, it's obvious that people despise the thought of whites exclusively living together. Why do you believe that people hate whites having total freedom of association?
I don't think most people do actually, and I think that's been revealed in the reaction to RTTL. Very few people would want to move to such a community currently. Although the worse things get and the more the actual consequences of a diverse society are felt by people, I think there will come a tipping point where it becomes very attractive very quickly, like happened in Irania. Now, but there, South Africa, you can have a literal failed state and still have a lot of liberal white people who are like, well, if we just gave more money to teachers, if we just paid our public, education faculty better, then everything could change. So like we're naive as a people, we're idealistic as a people, and things have to get really rough, and it will be a minority. And even now, like the people moving to Orania in South Africa, it's a small minority, but they have really rapidly increased their growth rate. It's accelerating, it's exponential. The worse things get, so that's going to happen at a certain point, uh, as the situation deteriorates. But can you remind me? So exact
No,
what's
no,
the
you're
question here?
no,
Yeah.
you're good. You're good. Um, why do you think you so you I asked you, why do you think that people despise whites living together?
Oh,
Because
yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
what's pushed online, at
True.
least. Online's not real life, but
Mhm.
so you don't think that's the case?
I don't think that is. No, I think more people are more tolerant, especially in the US, because freedom and live and let live is such a fundamental part of our culture. I think we can uniquely defend that right here. In South Africa, like they had to make all these special legal provisions before apartheid collapsed in order to secure Irania's right to exist. But anyway, my point was now they're accelerating their growth. Now a lot of people are coming on board, and I think you're going to see that in our case too. More people will tolerate it than want to actually sign up and move into these communities. But we also have a lot more potential, a lot more upside than Orania, where they're a traditional community in kind of a lowercase t sense. They're normal Christians. They're very industrious, intelligent people, but by their nature, they're probably not going to be the ones to develop some new innovative OS or business model that scales insanely and bring creates a lot of wealth. They are economically prosperous compared to the rest of South Africa, and it's great what they've managed to do with the limitations of their country. But we have a lot more resources in the US. We're an international association. We're much broader, and we're probably technically speaking better organized, and we're laying a better groundwork for a networked scalable kind of model. So when we take off and it's economically beneficial for ordinary white people to want to join, then I think you'll see the same kind of accelerated growth model that now you see in Irania, but to a much higher extent. But I get feedback from like blacks, Hispanics, Asians, less the Asians actually, more blacks and Hispanics who say they have no
Okay.
issue. Like Asians in particular tend to be the more intellectual woke types, and they'll absorb and memorize all of the anti-white propaganda, and they have some kind of vested interest in buying into it because it can potentially elevate their position. So it's interesting that's the demographic where in the past, like I was more inclined to naturally ally with the East Asians, like growing up in Southern California, I had a lot of East Asian friends, but they will internalize the propaganda like liberal whites will. Like it's really
Mm.
that, IQ 110 to 130, that's the danger zone. That's where you get the activists who are just, machine apparatchiks. So, um, yeah. So I do think more people are innately disposed in the US to accept communities like ours. I think there is a general antipathy towards whites doing anything positive. Like a family of all blondes, for example, will get hate like 9 times out of 10 if that picture is posted on a social media platform. Um, and I think whites are uniquely uh, like susceptible to this, partly because of our diversity internally. In one sense, genetically, whites are a very tightly homogenous population compared to Africans, for example, who are very diverse genetically, or even East Asians, where there's a lot like there's as much genetic diversity within the Han Chinese specifically as there is within all of Europe.
Mm.
So, like Europeans cluster really tightly, and we are very united as a culture compared to the other races at one level, but on another level, phenotypically and in the variety of our cultural expressions, we're extremely diverse. And so we have all these like parochial ethnic nepotisms and supremacist attitudes where like a Croatian will turn their nose down at a Serb or an Albanian. And okay, I
Yep.
get that one in particular. But like, English people will uh, we love all European people. European
Yes, we
Heritage
do. Yes, we
Association.
do.
Or there's like the anti-Irish thing for English people. So I think that
Irish
like
need not apply. No, just
exactly no, well, yeah, it was a real thing to some
it
extent.
was. Yeah.
Um, so that's a weakness, that's an exploit that people who are opposed to us can enter in. And I mean that's what Caesar did to the Gauls, right? The Gauls were constantly fighting in different factions within their civilization. Caesar came in, made the strategic alliances, turned one faction against another, and that's easy to do with our type of civilization where we don't build one despotic top-down big empire like the Han Chinese or like Middle Eastern despots. We have a multi-state model and always have. Like the Mycenaean Greeks, that was a multi-state model. Even like they were more despotic than they were more Near Eastern in attitude, but it was still multiple city states. In Germany, until very recently, you had multiple city states effectively. So there's more, just more exploits to get in there and work our various factions against each other. So, I mean, what's the solution to that? How do we patch that and get solidarity? Unfortunately, right now it looks like it's just going to be regression to the lowest common grievances, and that's going to be things like the violent crime issue and white victimization, and things like frustrations with affirmative action and the ways that we're really getting ripped off. Like I would love to see a positive white identity be built up, and then expanded and like the National Socialists did with their pan-German identity, where
Yes.
people were like moving to Germany to participate in this, and they had that esoteric dimension. They were something like really spiritually vital. I think they made a lot of mistakes though in how they went about it, and we can learn from those mistakes. But yeah, like realistically, I think we are going to find our common enemy before we find that uniting factor that really glues us together internally. Our own groups have to find that glue and work as tightly organized units, but then we still have to carefully kind of negotiate this cultural landscape and conversation, especially as it occurs on X and Instagram and these platforms. And right now, that's stuff like, getting behind shut in his
Uh,
case, where the self-defense case. Um, and it's like it's kind of a low IQ domain compared to where I would like to see things. But like a lot of people are getting behind shut. And I think that's actually good. And more white people are more willing to do that and more willing to stick our neck out there and take a stand because the community in general will rally behind. We're definitely punishing people who don't signal in that direction of white solidarity. And I think that kind of has to happen. If like you don't get behind a person like Chud, we're okay. Is he problematic in some respects? Do we like everything he does? Who cares? He's one of us. Other groups have this
mhm.
mentality. They get
Yeah.
behind their own. Carmelo Anthony got $600,000 in
Yeah.
donations for murdering a white boy. So we have to respond in kind, and we're actually better positioned uh, once people are in the habit of let's donate to help this legal case. Let's get behind this person against the doxing. Let's like support our own. When we build that culture, and then there are options like RTTL, Patriot Front, these other groups that people can sign up for. They have websites, they're well organized, and they can generate real activism that makes a difference, generate legal research and legal precedent that makes a difference. Then it'll all like the gears will start churning, and our our platform will actually be forwarded. um, but it is frustrating how susceptible we are to internal divisions. We really have to go after the everyman, though, the ordinary person. I think that it hits them first in their material conditions, the safety of their community. I think we have to lean into the empirical data on diversity and the impact, especially in schools. And what does this mean for your kids if they're busing in, blacks from Baltimore into your Maryland suburb? And it's something that many, many white people are dealing with. So, if I knew more ways to get this situation to be more clear to more white people, to get like more activity going, I would be doing those things.
Yes.
But I think generally, like the trends are in the right direction, and the best we can do is organize more tightly, like get more invested and have more skin in the game ourselves as individuals who are woken up on these issues. And then the rest of the country, like the people currently watching Fox News, they will start to follow. If you have a radical minority, 20% of the population who is uncompromising and they believe what's happening is wrong and they're not going to put up with it and they make a stink, people will go along with it. Like I
Mhm.
worked in a construction crew at one point, and there was one like racist old guy. And I knew that a lot of the other people weren't racist. And privately they would like signal anti-racist things um between themselves. But like when this guy was around, no one would challenge his racist beliefs at all because you knew he was uncompromising. You weren't going to change his mind. He really believed what he was saying, and no one was a radical anti-racist. And so the radical racist set the tone. And when we were all together, you were going to hear some things about Mexicans. All right. So that's our strength, is that we have this deep foundation. We have arguments extensively going down many different lines supporting our worldview, and more of us are becoming more familiar with more of this data as time goes on in our ecosystem. So it's like we're very equipped to be that radical minority that is uncompromising. And the rest of the country, the ordinary people, are just going to have to move our way, but only if we put skin in the game, only if we act like we are morally righteous. And we are, because it's our children's future that is being taken away from them. It's our communities that are being made unsafe. We are the ones losing our homelands. And so there's going to have to come a time where the fear of doxing, the fear of losing job opportunities, the fear of upward social mobility is going to have to be overcome. We will
Yep.
have to provide our own opportunities, our own network, and we're already kind of at that scale. If someone gets canceled now, they'll probably find a job within our circles. We have a lot of business owners, we have a lot of high income people, a lot of people who can help out in situations like that if you're willing to stick your neck out there. But if you remain kind of cowering yourself and trying to shelter yourself from the negative consequences of standing up for our people, then, well, that's going to set the
It
tone itself. If
exactly,
you,
it
the
feeds
radical,
into it.
cower, yep, everyone else is going to do the same thing. And I firmly believe like you get the world you deserve, right? If you're not satisfied with the quality of leaders that are out there now, well, why aren't you leading? If you get the consequence, God is just, in my opinion. I really believe that. And if you're not getting what you want out of life, it's because you have not put in what you need to put in. That's at an individual level in terms of success or even dating or things like that. I know it's very easy to get frustrated and say, like, the world's just against me. This is all unfair. But ultimately, is it? And is that mentality even worth entertaining? If you take the other mentality that basically I get what I deserve. And if I'm not liking something about my life, I have to change something to fix it. Well, then you're going to make necessary changes and the rate of growth for you versus the person complaining that things are unfair is going to be massive. So you want to be in that camp. You want to have accountability for the state of the movement rather than like being disappointed and sitting back. Like, who are the two Muppets who are constantly criticizing, like from their box seats, um, in the Muppet Show?
Oh,
Any,
those the 2 grumpy old men, dude?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's what
that's
they're called.
okay. They don't have, maybe they have names
I
too, but
don't know, dude.
uh, yeah, that's too many of us. We're like sitting there criticizing content creators, acting like passive observers. And it's like until you take that mentality that
Yes.
you hold yourself accountable for the success of the movement, and if we fail, you take that on your shoulders, which I've recently actually done. And it's like I've been way more productive the last 2 years with that attitude than I was for the previous 10 years, where I was like, no one will listen to me. I have all these good ideas. It's like, no, I took accountability. It's because of my failures as a content creator, my failures as a leader. Um, and I still have a lot of room to grow, and all of us have a lot of room to
We all
grow. But
do. Yes.
we'll see more progress as individuals when we take that correct step. You get the world you deserve. And if you really internalize that, you'll make the changes you need to make, and then people around you will as well.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like we if we want a strong community, we must create a strong self. Mastering oneself is the first step of that utopian vision to actualize your goals. Even if the world is going to shit, America in particular, a lot of us are Americans, a lot of my audience is Americans. Um, Even if the situation is deteriorating, these things that you can do in your personal life to not only push the envelope in a positive direction, but also better yourself. This is how you create your ideal future. Everyone else is doing it. Why not us? Yeah, we need to step out of those box seats and quit bitching and actually make something happen.
Mhm.
Um, Dude, so we've talked about facing controversy many times so far during this interview. Why do you, Arvol, why do you continue to pursue white advocacy even in the face of opposition?
Because I'm stubborn, because I'm one of those high IQ disagreeable types.
Ah,
uh,
because
no,
I'm
man, it's like
stubborn.
because I really believe that my children's future will be severely affected by how all of this pans out. Um, it's like Yeah, they could just assimilate into the mainstream culture. Maybe they don't race mix, but probably some of their kids will, just by the sheer numbers of non-whites in the country. And then eventually, like, no one who looks like me or thinks like me or has my values will exist, and my country will be gone and will be replaced by foreigners. And that's it's so essential to life. Like, what does life try to do? It tries to propagate itself, preserve its existence. And that's like the deepest level of failure there can possibly be, at least at an earthly level. So it's like that's really the consequence. And and I do tend to think on very large scales. It's like philosophically I got into this thinking about cosmology and like the multiverse and what's ultimate reality in these questions, or in terms of my understanding of prehistory. Like, my approach was, I'm going to go back to the very beginning of hominin evolution and understand more deeply how, not just like what's the nature of the races, but like how were Neanderthals different and what were their selective pressures. And by taking that zoomed out view and going back tens of thousands of years, then when I come back in and look at the Neolithic and the history of civilization in the Bronze Age and then classical antiquity, all of these layers compound and enhance my understanding. So I'm just justifying, like, take the broad view and you will make better judgments. Like, I understand classical antiquity, I think, a lot better because I understand the Stone Age very well. And I even see references at some level in writers like Plato, where he's like referring back to a pre Neolithic style of life in certain dialogues, specifically the Statesman. And like, I know the cultural precedents, the archaeological precedents that he's referring to. And so I see the course of development. Well, with our struggle, you really have to keep that bird's eye view in mind, because if you remain always in medias res, in the middle of things, you can't make rational judgments. You're always going to be swayed by the news cycle. The worst place to place your attention is to like pin it on the 2 week cycle of stories going through X and different platforms. Unfortunately, that's what most people naturally kind of harmonize with. That's their attention span. And they forget what is outside of that 2 week window. And they'll like elevate figures and get overly hopeful about particular figures. And then they'll totally turn on them and think they're terrible because they have the wrong take on this issue or that issue. You have to keep the long view and keep the the story of Western civilization and where we are in mind, if you're going to keep your behavior pinned on what is truly important, what is truly salient. A big part of intelligence is not processing power, or, well, that is a big part too, but like more important, more essential to intelligence than problem solving ability or sheer processing power is honing in on the relevant details. Wash out the noise and focus on the signal, and you will get the information that you need to act on. And that's what you get when you zoom out to the big picture. What is this country going to look like a generation from now? And at a deeper level, like, my sociological views are informed by metaphysics. It's informed by an anthropology and what is the human soul and what are the faculties constituting it, and like Plato's tripartite soul, and what are the metaphysical dynamics underlying sociology, like the appeal of appetite and manifold desires downward into matter, contrasted with the sublimating potential of reason to disclose higher forms and see how they fit into a bigger picture. It's like you need the bigger picture vertically, horizontally, in terms of time, in order to remain true and remain like cardinal in your activity. A lot of people are very changeable and they shift with the times. They say one thing uh, in 1 month, and then 3 months later, they're saying a very different thing. I've basically always said the same things. This is like, I literally am just stubborn, but how can you be stubborn like this? Because I think it's a valuable thing. You want to be fixed, you want to be cardinal, and then other people will actually gravitate towards you over time. If you're constantly changing, you're not going to influence anyone, because what are you going to influence? If you have a pool of water and you do the same motion again and again and again and again and again, you're going to influence a current. The water will adopt your motion. But if you just go in there and splash around randomly, well, all that noise cancels out. So if you
Mm.
want to be stubborn, you want to be cardinal and fixed in your trajectory, you want to stand for something so that other people will join you and so that your goals get accomplished, you need to think about that big picture in time, in space, in principles. Don't just look at particular cases. Don't be trapped in the realm of particulars. Appeal to universals, appeal to deep history. So, like, going back to the question of like the philosophical tradition and these big ideas, or the scientific arguments around the nature of race and sociological principles, that is really important if you want to keep people in our worldview, keep them fighting for white well-being. You need that like meta level. You need the bigger context, and I think that's something I'm just predisposed to think big. All my like papers in middle school or high school, the teacher would have the criticism like too broad, like narrow your
Right.
scope here. It's like that's just how I think. So um, comes naturally to some people. But I think all of us are capable of thinking about philosophical questions. All of us are capable of understanding our people's history. We have to do a better job of presenting that information in an appealing way in the current age and media landscape that we have. That's for sure. But yeah, no, I mean it's totally possible that we build like the right package to present the right big ideas, the right historical narratives, the right scientific facts, and make that something that people can easily assimilate and digest and retain. And that'll keep them cardinal and fixed. They won't be changeable. And then that body of people being so cardinal and fixed, being the radicals, being uncompromising, the rest of society will conform to our view if we can affect that in ourselves. And if that is already the case for you, well then once you've perfected yourself, you go on to perfect others. That's the natural order of things. Every being seeks its own good kind of first. Put your own mask on first before you put your child's mask on, right? If the plane is going down or whatever. And so if that's where you are, well then think about how can I start moving beyond my own understanding of these subjects, and how do I start? And I'm sure that's probably why you got into podcasting yourself. I imagine it's a
Yeah.
natural thing. When you master this material, you take on a duty. Now, how do I make it more digestible, easier for other people to understand? A lot of people criticize having like 1,000 podcasters and a bunch of different shows because it's too scattered. And I totally disagree. I think like you'll resonate with people that I won't. A smaller content creator than yourself, they have something that they are reaching, an audience they're reaching, a message that they're coming at it at a certain angle that somebody's going to need. And I go to this like really small church down a dirt road. Um, and like the pastor says, these country churches are important because there are some people who will only show up for the small country church down their dirt road. Like they're not going to go into
Oh,
town and show up there. And it is so true. It's like, why not just have one big mega church? Well, because people, like, especially among Europeans, we're diverse. We're interested in different things, in different aesthetics, and different aspects of our history and narrative. And some people are more philosophical, some are less, some are, we are diverse, and we need a diverse range of content creators tailoring the message that is, you know, ultimately unified at one level, but tailoring it to bring more people in at more levels. So, I appreciate people like yourself who accepted that duty. And now you're out there, you're contributing to this whole ecosystem, you're educating people. And if you're watching this, it's like it's not too late necessarily to get into it yourself, whether that's a podcast or whether maybe even more productively, that's joining another enterprise like yours or mine and helping with clips, helping with editing, helping potentially as a contributor. We need more collaborative media stuff as well the likes of the Daily Wire and Infowars, but or the now defunct Infowars, I guess. Um,
Yeah.
but uh, but we'll get there. We'll build it.
No, that's a solid point. The guys who might be too afraid or maybe too smart to not put their faces on screen, there are plenty of opportunities behind the scenes. Again, I'm sure not every member of Return to the Land or other organizations are face out. If you do wish to remain anonymous in this struggle, it is more than possible, but if you guys feel called to contribute in any way, there are plenty of opportunities. And it has been, me personally, man, I have just had such great experiences meeting people in real life. The first time I've actually taken a commercial flight was since I have started my endeavors with pro-white advocacy. So it's been a world of opportunity. So, yeah, we need to drop the fear and move forward because there's really no other way to go. And that's the only way, to speak to your point, that is the only way to shift these societal and cultural norms is by taking action and doing it yourself, and others will follow. But, dude, if you are successful, whatever success looks like, with Return to the Land, what can you speculate about, like, the future opportunity for whites in America in general? Like, what does success look like for RTTL?
Uh, the RTTL empire that lasts 1,000 years, obviously.
Let's go.
It's really like I want to serve the needs of ordinary white people who are having their opportunities taken away. If the ordinary white person in America had the option of going and having a safe community, having a job in our network, having their kids educated in our network, I would count that as an absolute win. I'm not as committed to the precise borders. Like, I don't care about the geographic aspect of the United States as much as I care about the American people. And they are my people. And obviously, it's an international association. We want white well being around the world. But I'm an American. That's where I'm coming from. What I want to see is in this country, our right to organize as white Americans, have our own communities, our own education, our own businesses fully expanded, and gaining ground on that front and not constantly retreating. I think we need to reverse that tide. And I think actually there is a political possibility there as trust in institutions goes down, as people become wise to the fact that, like, foreigners are buying our elections. Right now,
Mm,
foreigners are paying millions of dollars to unseat Thomas Massey. So some random district in Kentucky, some backwater, low population area of the country becomes an international battleground, and people are seeing that. Maybe it's a little bit too slow, and we're going to lose ground before we eventually gain it. But ultimately, I think I am optimistic. I think the tide is turning just based on the nature of media today, the nature of access to information. People like Elon Musk are important, where he doesn't decide to shut down X again with censorship. We need to keep the open discourse. We have to strike the right balance in our messaging, being true to our ideals, but not being unduly offensive to normative sensibilities. And I think RTTL strikes that balance well, where it's like, yeah, we're whites only, but we also accept that you can have a black only community down the road. It's like, it's one country, right? Let's have America first. Let's have our our military be reasonably strong but not interventionalist. Let's have our economic interests taken care of, and like maybe there are some ventures in our hemisphere that are worth it. But again, let's not become bellicose. Let's be virtuous. Like some a very basic platform that we want America to do well can simultaneously exist with our defending our right to freely associate and have our own spaces and organize ourselves. Again, that that's appealing to this kind of libertarian leaning coalition, which I think can attract people on the left, people on the right, just reasonable people who are anti-corruption as well. And I think the common enemy thing, it's like we see a common enemy, like with the Chud case, that's the level of like mass organizing that's actually possible is when there's some big conflict and a big news story involving a hero and a villain, more or less. Though that grabs people's attention. Well, we need that at a sociological level as well. And I think Israel and also just like big pharma, which once again, you're dealing with the same actors in many
Yes.
cases,
Yes.
or, Monsanto, agricultural corporations who are poisoning our food, the people who are like releasing genetically engineered ticks or whatever they're doing now, supposedly.
I
I
heard
don't know if
that
you
was
follow
you.
all these stories. Well, I mean, did I release a few boxes of ticks?
Yeah, just a couple
Um,
boxes. That
no, I
that's a
I did not
callback to
release
yesterday's show I checked
I
out of
did not
yours.
release ticks.
He did not release ticks, everybody.
That was a joke. So yeah, I mean, I think there's enough anger or the Epstein stuff. There's enough anger about all of this corruption, about all of this waste, and it is actually enough to fight against evil at a national level. Let's have America's well-being, politically speaking. Let's advocate for that. Let's build coalitions. It's like, okay, is Dan Blazarian white per se?
Mm,
Probably not. Would he be accepted at RTTL? Probably not. But he could do some good in fighting foreign influence. Other actors in these spaces can do some good in promoting accountability in government. And really, it's like it's it's not about this. We have to push our radical ideas and take power from the top down. That is really, it's like the hyper stimulant uh, thing that's sensational and appetizing. It's like the straight sugar. It's very stimulating, very sweet, but it's not actually wholesome and good for you. And even if you got that power, would you know how to really employ it? People like Massey, who know all the codes, who know the full Constitution, who know how to actually put a bill through and build coalitions and act strategically and know all the mechanisms of government, like that is really what we need. We need more statesmen, more people who want to improve outcomes on a granular level and not just here's this big vision of what it could look like. Because I don't think we're going to get the new Caesar. I don't think we're going to get the top down dictator who just fixes everything. I think there isn't a figure like that in the political landscape at present. No one is even remotely close to becoming that. But we do have people like Massey. We do have citizen journalists who are exposing things and getting a lot of people very upset with the current administration. So again, we can certainly have a success scenario where we are allowed to freely associate, build our communities, build our power economically in every respect. We have the Second Amendment. We can build, hey, I mean, we can be like building drones for the military in some of these communities. That's an idea that was even kicked out there recently. So we can be part of their infrastructure, an indispensable part. And then, well, what do we do from there? Is this libertarianism enough? Can we eventually transcend it? Maybe, but you're talking decades down the line. If this goes well, we do have more of a libertarian, accountable, less corrupt, less foreign influence government that doesn't persecute groups like RTTL. RTTL and other similar pro white groups grow, they grow, they grow. Government remains hands off and beneficial for the American people. Well, then what happens? If you correct all the incentives, then what happens over time? Well, the best should rise to the top. And that should be us. If we believe in ourselves, then let's create that scenario where we can have the colorblind meritocracy. And it doesn't matter because ultimately it's just going to be white supremacy at the end of the day anyway. No, that's a joke. We're not white supremacists. But that's the vision I
oh,
think
fuck.
that is realistic, that I think we can have hope in, and that we can start building right now.
Yes. Okay. Dude, I and whenever libertarianism gets brought up, dude, I have so many aversions to it. There's opportunity for degeneracy to run rampant. Um, there's opportunity for, capitalism, monopolies, all that good stuff. But, um, I am trying to not how do I wanna phrase it? Because 'Cause it's been phrased to me a similar way. It's not necessarily the vehicle that I have to determine how to get there, so much so as I need to support what is getting us there. So that the and that this landscape is ever changing. And if we do see some sort of black swan event, in the coming years, then I do agree with your sentiment that more people are going to kinda be like, "Wait a minute, this is like do or die." I'm sure of it, and this is where my optimism shines through. As soon as the numbers come out to where we are a white minority in the United States, more people who are predisposed to will wake up and, really start to, smell the roses.
Mhm.
But besides now here it is, besides joining RTTL or becoming a member of RTTL, do you have any final words for anyone looking to get involved with white advocacy themselves?
Yeah, I mean, both fronts are very important. Reforming our government and being responsible citizens, holding government accountable, and participating in government, and then also building white communities, like both are very, very important and valuable. Don't try to do the one through the other, though.
Mm,
'Cause obviously, like, people who criticize us for retreating to the woods, it's like, if this is what we were doing, that was literally our political path, was we're just gonna build these communities and hope the government never looks at us. It's like, that would be really dumb. That's not it, though. We have 2 forks. As individuals, we participate in local government. We go to town hall meetings. We go to our local Republican Party. I should more. I don't nearly enough. I'm not engaged enough in that dimension, and I should improve. But it is very like the path is pretty clear. People come up who need volunteers on their campaigns. Worthwhile candidates occasionally come around. People like Thomas Massey, usually to a lesser extent, and you can volunteer and you can help make your local government better. You can get a decent representative elected in your county. You can, I mean, build up a professional resume where you would be a good candidate for county sheriff, county coroner. Like, serve, be productive, be useful. Don't be too cynical about existing power structures. People are currently very distrustful of government and institutions generally, rightfully so,
huh,
but we shouldn't let that spoil our attitudes towards the actual institutions built by our ancestors, because those we can actually improve and take back. Not all at once. The corruption crept in over time, and we're going to have to purge it over time. But it can happen. Like, even in a microcosm example, like New York City, you can have a good mayor come in who, like, like, okay, Giuliani had problems too, but like it was a better, safer city under Giuliani than under Cuomo or whatever.
yeah.
So so we can do the same thing block by block, neighborhood by neighborhood, in our intentional communities, building up that, grassroots level, and then at the political level, being engaged in local politics, and yeah, rallying behind the right people at the national level as well. Uh, and then other groups, not just RTTL, the active clubs. There's no reason not to be part of an active club. You should remain active. You should help to organize and keep your guys accountable, uh, because that's the future. Is what are young men doing now? Your physical health has a lot to do with whether you're ultimately going to start a family, and even the quality of your kids. It's like, if you're not in a healthy place, if we're not being responsible stewards of our biological endowment, then the next generation is going to suffer for it. So, and by the way, the libertarian point of like, well, this degeneracy is being allowed. Yeah, but degeneracy is eugenic. It actually is, because the people who fall for it shouldn't be breeding. Most of this stuff is biologically predetermined. The person who is susceptible to being trans, okay, I almost don't want to say this, but I have to say it,
Do
should
it.
have been sterilized anyway. Okay. So, like, yeah, we don't want to live around it. And that's why intentional communities, that's why we should relocate to certain counties where progress can be made. Okay, if you're in a all blue district in Vermont, probably you're not going to make a difference on the intentional community front or in terms of local politics. And all of your efforts will basically be wasted. Besides, maybe you can donate on, to RTTL's fund or to a campaign in some other district that does have a shot. But relocate is one of the most powerful. You have only so many resources that you're going to have at your disposal in your lifetime. Put those resources where they're concentrated with like-minded people. Don't allow them to remain scattered, because what's going to happen? It's all going to be blown away into the wider economy. In communities, when you have housework that has to be done, you can hire someone in your community, and that money can subsidize them building up that same community, rather than hiring some random white person who has no loyalty, who's going to be just gone. They might move away. We have to be building up centers of power and wealth by moving, by building physical communities. And it doesn't have to be like a compound like our first settlement kind of is. You can get together with people in RTTL. I'm not going to beat around the bush and say, hey, go try whatever. We're the ones who
Yeah.
are organized to do this now. So, like, if you're eligible, sign up for RTTL and organize a community center by, right? Get a recreational property, get like 1 acre on the river near you. And then everybody in the area on weekends in the summer can come meet up there and like have work parties and make it a nicer place over time. And then when new people, like friends that you meet at work, you drop some red pills, well, then you bring them to a barbecue at the river. And they're like, this is awesome. How do I become part of this? You make it appealing to people, you get productive, you have work parties, you organize, and it's across the board. It's what you're doing every dimension of life. We have enemies that are full spectrum engaged against us at every level, in like children's education, mainstream movies, the textbooks, laws. There's no element of modern life where we don't have these parasites trying to influence us and change us to be something that we're not. So we have no choice but to respond at a full spectrum level. Activism isn't like some activity as opposed to others. We're for white communities, white well-being, and that means every aspect of your life coming together to serve that, to benefit that. It's like, I'm not part-time at this. I am full-time. I live my values. You can also live your values, and it's gonna pay off for you. You will find opportunities you didn't before, but it's going to
Yes.
take some risk. It's like if you want to leave your job for a better job, that entails some risk. You don't know what it's going to be like. Maybe you'll be fired. There's the temptation. You're comfortable where you are, your needs are met. Don't rock the boat. It's generally worth rocking the boat. And the people who are willing to leave one company and move up to other opportunities as they arise, those are people that end up compensated well. Those are the people that lead companies rather than always being like a wagey, right? So, just take stock of your life. Are you living in the best place for you? Are you part of all the organizations you should be a part of? Are you participating in local government? Are you being a responsible citizen? And like all of the fine grained stuff beyond that, you're going to make better decisions because you'll be part of collectives where they have better information than you could possibly have as an individual. Like even just our group chats, like we're all better informed about all the deals for agricultural supplies and things that are going on in the local area, and when there's a meetup for beekeeping or whatever at this farm supply store. Like we're tuned in a way that ordinary locals, some of them are, because they have similar networks. They have
Yeah.
church, text message groups or whatever, or Facebook groups. But we're going to think clearer and better and be better informed and make better decisions the more we integrate into genuine communities, right? The parts or the whole is greater than the parts in an authentic community. It is like a larger spirit of its own, and it's going to lift you up with it if you make the necessary changes. So, obviously, yeah, try to sign up for RTTL if you're eligible, join the other clubs, active clubs, things like PF, support local candidates, vote, obviously. And each of these, it cross pollinates too. Because when you show up for the local Republican Party meetings, well, you meet somebody who's like more of a normie, but has a good head on their shoulders, has a sense of civic duty, and you lean on that and extend that sense of civic duty to a sense of racial duty and civilizational duty to preserve who we are. And that's not a long leap at all, really. So, but it certainly helps where at the end of the day, the people that you meet, that you network with, you can bring them back to some kind of hub. If you don't have a home base, you're really not getting started. So secure your home base. And if that means moving where other people will found that with you, do it because there are opportunities. Anyone who's willing to move right now, there's a place in a white community for you. Will you have to change jobs? Probably. Will you have to take some risk? Probably. But we're not going to win if none of us are willing to take any risks and if we expect everything to just be done for us.
Great advice, man. Great advice. Now, could you remind the audience where is the best place to apply for Return to the Land?
Returntotheland.org. You can get more information about how we work, how we're structured in our Substack articles. Those are again linked on the website. If you want to help out, we have a few donation drives. You can find that on the website as well. If you want to follow me on social media, my account on X is at @RVOL_. We do have the official RTTL account, RTTL official on X. You could follow that. Even just liking, retweeting, replying, like all of it helps. As much as like I am against doom scrolling and getting sucked into the internet stuff too much, if you're going to be doing it anyway, especially like help out the content creators, boost their stuff. There are too many people who are just purely passive, even to the point of like not willing to click the like button. Come on, man. It's like, have you
Yeah,
watched
it's a
2 hours
button,
of
dude.
this and you've not clicked that button? What are you doing?
Yeah, click the
Help.
like, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dude, that I always throw that jab in to my live streams. It's like, "What are you guys doing? I'm in your pocket, just unlock your phone, go click the like." It's so easy, and it helps people who you align with ideologically. Like, it's so simple, but it is effective. Because. Dude, there could be a guy on the fence that's kinda going through the same process that, one of you guys listening went through, and we just made an impact on them, but they're never gonna see the video because you just didn't click that like button and leave a comment and subscribe to the channel, and you guys are gonna find all kinds of links for RTTL down below. You're gonna find RVOL'S personal links. I hope you guys had a great time listening in to our intellectual discussion today. I had a great time sitting down with Orwoll, and this has been another episode of Mainstream Dissident. My name is Adam. I've been your host, and until next time.